So there's a few different phrases that I have noticed over the last year or so that I've kind of picked up on. Maybe it's me just being a dad or a youth pastor or whatever, but there are a few different phrases that I say often, especially around my house. One of them is, yes, just a minute. When somebody asks me to do something, Rachel says I do this on Chuck time. She'll ask me to do something. Hey, will you go unload the dishwasher? Will you grab the laundry? Yeah, in a minute. And then about 30 minutes later or an hour later, I see her get up to go do it, and then I'm like, oh crap, I told her I was gonna do something. And you hop up and you go do it. Right, another one of those phrases is we'll see. If you're a parent, you understand that phrase, we'll see. It basically means no, but you're telling your kid we'll see so that they'll leave you alone and stop asking you that question. Another thing I say around the house all the time is, hey, will you do me a favor? And I say that a lot, and I also hate that phrase when it is asked of me, right? Because it could mean, hey, will you do me a favor? Will you pass me the ketchup? Hey, will you do me a favor? Will you pass me the salt? Like, it could be something easy, simple like that, or it could be, hey, can you do me a favor? Let me borrow your toothbrush for the weekend, right? Like, when that question is asked of you, I always want to say, yeah, I can help out because I'm that type of person, right? I just want to be there, want to be able to help people out, but I find myself stopping and saying, hold on a second. I need some more information on this whole thing, right? Hey, can you do me a favor? Maybe. It depends on what that favor is. Let's get some more details in here. Why don't you explain what this favor is, and then I can give you an answer. We've all probably experienced that at one point or another. We experience these open-ended questions and these invitations where we just feel like we need a little bit more information. Well, that's what we're going to get today as we join Chris as we wrap up this series called This Is For Everyone.
Hey, do you remember the movie Elf? I love the movie Elf. I know it's not Christmas, and if you don't like the movie Elf, then you got issues and you need counseling. The Elf is amazing. There's so many things that make me laugh out loud. One of the things I love about it is when you watch the guy Buddy the Elf, when he gets to New York, and like one of my favorite parts is when he eats all the gum underneath all the rails and stuff. I like to watch it with my wife because every time he does it, I feel like she is squirting Purell in her mouth at that point, just trying to get away from the germs of it. I think that's hilarious. Buddy, everything he sees is new. Everything is amazing. Everything he reads, he believes. Remember when he meets the beautiful Jovi and finally takes her to all of the places that he loves. He takes her to this cafe and he keeps saying, I found it, I found it, I found it. And she's like, you found what? And he gets her this cup of coffee. On the front of the cafe, it says, best cup of coffee in the world. I found the best cup of coffee in the world. And then she drinks it and she's like, it's just nasty diner coffee. It's not the best cup of coffee in the world. It's like the sign promised one thing that the cup of coffee didn't deliver. Yeah. I think what Jovi found in that moment is something that a lot of other people find in life. And I'm not sure we're allowed to talk about this. So I figured since it's just me and you, right, just personal, like we're not in a big crowd today, I would share it with you. And don't judge me because I think I'm right on this. I think a lot of people when it comes to Christianity find that they hear about it, they hear all the promises. I don't want to call it hype, but you can if you want to. They are promises like you're going to experience joy. I mean, like crazy amounts of joy, like stupid amounts of joy. And then like peace, it'll be so much you can't even understand it. Nobody's going to understand. I don't even know why we talk about it because you can't understand it. But you're going to experience so much peace in your life. And purpose, you're going to find purpose. It'll get you out of bed in the morning. You're going to live for this reason. I mean, you'll find fulfillment and contentment and all of these things in life. A love that you've never had, you'll experience. It is bonkers. That is Christianity. And for a lot of us, a lot of people who have tried Christianity out and tried to figure out, is it what it's promising? Often what we feel is, I believe that stuff when I read it and hear about it, but I'll be honest with you, my experience, the coffee is not as good as it's promised to be. Like, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I know, don't quit judging me. I see your judgy eyes in there, stop it. I'm just saying for a lot of people, I'll say a lot of us, there've been times in our life we go, man, the promise and the reality aren't matching up. Like, I'm not feeling that joy. I'm not feeling that peace. I'm not feeling that purpose. I'm not feeling that contentment. I'm not feeling that love. Honestly, I'm just having a hard time getting up, doing life. And what I want is all that Christianity promises. And it begins to make you ask some pretty big questions. Here's two that we'll just jump in with today. First question is, do the promises write a check that the reality can't cash? Is it just overhyped? Have we promised Christianity to be something that most people aren't going to experience? That's the first one. Hey, let's at least be honest. It's out there. That's a possibility. There's tons of other things that overpromise and underdeliver, right? Second question, is it maybe that what we're experiencing is not what God ever intended for us to experience? Maybe it's not overhyped and underdelivered. Maybe what we're experiencing right now is not the way God intended life to be. Maybe we've misconstrued something. Maybe there's something we don't understand. Maybe there's something we're missing. Two questions. I want to get down to the bottom of that. So to get to the root of the issue, then this is just me, so just us talking. When I grew up going to church, and so I heard a lot about God. And so I grew up with my own understanding of what it was to be a person who was a Christ follower, a person who's a Christian, whatever word you want to use, that's what I'm talking about. Now, I'm not going to say somebody taught me wrongly, because I've been pretty blessed with a lot of good people in my life who have kind of shared truth with me. But my image went something like this, even as I was growing up. It was something like this. When I was born and I did things wrong. The Bible calls that sin. You can call it whatever you want. Today we call it making mistakes, but when I was growing up, they didn't call it making a mistake. They called it screwing up, doing wrong. They called it a lot of other things. So that was me, though. Nobody had to teach me that if you're going to get in trouble, if the truth was found out, that sometimes telling a little different version of the truth might keep you out of trouble. Like, nobody sat me down and said, listen, Chris, there's going to be times in your life when if you tell the truth, you're going to get in trouble. So if you'll just shadow the truth, shade the truth, or just don't tell it at all, that'll help you out. Nobody told me that. I just figured it out. I was a gifted child. Nobody had to tell me that if that guy's got something that you want and you don't have it, if you just took a little bit of his, then you would have it, and that would be glorious. Nobody taught me that. Just figured it out. Nobody taught me a lot of things. What I figured out when it came to sin, I was like pre-wired for that. I was pretty good at it without trying. Everything good in life, I've had to work a lot at, and I'm not particularly good at any of it. When it came to things like that, I was just naturally bent that way. The truth is, I think all of us are. You don't have to teach your kids to grow angry and say things they shouldn't. They just learn that, and then they have parents that help with that, and family as well, and then they go to school. You know what I mean? We're pre-wired that way. And here's what I was taught. That's called sin, and what sin does is it separates people from God. That God doesn't cohabitate well with sin. Something has to be done for that sin, for God to be with you, and it separates people from God. And the way I grew up, I was taught that that God saw that issue and he sent his son Jesus, and Jesus literally came and bridged that gap between us and God. He died on a cross, and we drew pictures of that. And literally, he bridged that gap, because I could never be good enough. A very broken me and a very perfect God don't fit. But Jesus bridged that gap. He lived a perfect life, came into a sinful world, died as a payment for my sin. That's the way I understood it, and I bought that. And then my role was to accept what Jesus had done. Here's how I was going to live out the life with joy and peace and purpose and contentment and understanding and love and all that. Here's what I was supposed to do. I would invite Jesus into my heart, into my life, and that would do away with that separation between people and God. That's the way I understood it. And I love that. And I did that. I bought that. What I love about all of that is I think there's so much of that that is true. That fits so well. There's a little bit of it that I think we need to work on. Leslie and I had some friends a few years back, and they had a little boy named Tyler. And Tyler was growing up going to church. And one day somebody asked Tyler, they said, Tyler, have you ever invited Jesus into your heart? And Tyler goes, no, Jesus is not in my heart. And of course his parents are like, what? And he goes, that's ridiculous. And parents are freaking out, and he goes, there's no way Jesus could fit in your heart. He's too big. That's crazy. And then it's like, well, that's pretty smart for a kid. There's no way you can fit Jesus in your heart, and you get what he's saying and all that. And you're like, oh, yeah, well, I understand. He goes, just his head. What did you say? It's ridiculous to think you can fit Jesus in your heart, just his head. I just have Jesus' head in my heart. To which you go, it's going to be a long run, Tyler, if you live this way. But you get where he's going. It doesn't make sense. So maybe we would say we invite Jesus into our life, and many of us grew up believing that as I invite Jesus into my life, then Jesus changes who I am and makes me into a better form of who I am, who I was intended to be. That's what Christianity is. The problem with that is I'm not sure it fits a biblical philosophy. Here's the way I would say it to you. If you look at this picture is a picture of my living room. That's where I hang out a lot. If you look all the way across the living room, you'll see there's a little door open, and that's our spare bedroom. For me, it's like, hey, I'll make room for Jesus in my life. I've even got an extra room. He can just come hang out anytime he wants. He's not in my heart, because that would be ridiculous. I have an extra room. Or if you look on my sofa or love seat, we got room for him to hang out right where we live. I mean, sure, I have room in my life for Jesus. Or if you look at this picture, that's kind of the dining room. We're one of those weird families that sits at the table and eats dinner together sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. I mean, like not even just sitting right by the TV. I know. Where does that crazy stuff come from? But we do. But if you look, we've got Claire and Leslie and Chris. We've even got an extra seat there. We got room for Jesus in our life. Heck, I've got a car. He can sit right up front if he wants to. He can sit right with me. I don't care. I got room. If he needs to park, I'll move my car out of the garage. He can do it there. I've got room in my life for Jesus. For some of us, we kind of look at it this way. The fact you're watching this, you've sliced out a piece of your life, so there's room for Jesus in it. There's room for God in your life, right? Or for some of you, you're crazy enough that you like open a Bible and spend time just trying to learn or grow or understand or to be more closely attached to. I got time in my life for that. I slice out that piece. For some people, fanatical people, they're like, I go to a community group and I go do that so I can be with other people who are inviting God into their lives, so together we can figure out how we can do that together, because it is how it works best. That is how life works best, is with other people who are trying to accomplish the same things. No matter what you're trying to accomplish, it always works better that way. We're always better together than we are by ourselves. So some of you even do that. Like me, another slice of my life for that. All of that sounds so good. The problem is when we get into Scripture, I'm not sure that's where we land. So I want to show you, with the remaining time we have left, I want to kind of give you a glimpse of the biblical view of what Christianity is. Maybe it's not exactly like the one I just painted. The book of John, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that's the New Testament, it's the fourth book. The book of John kind of gives us a real critical view of what Jesus did while he was on earth. It starts out telling a little bit about who Jesus is, and then it tells about this guy named John, and John's role was this. He came along and he said, I am not Jesus. I am not the guy. People followed him around because he kept saying things that sounded really good and really smart. And so he had his own little disciples or people who followed him, and they kept saying, you the man. He kept saying, I am not the man. As a matter of fact, he's the man. He was like, here's Jesus. He was like the announcer for him. Matter of fact, if he was in today's world, he would have looked a lot like this guy. Maybe you recognize him. He was literally the arrow. He was the sign turner that said, Jesus is coming, Jesus is coming. And then eventually, in just a second we're going to see, he says, here's Jesus. He was that guy. He worked for Progressive in some weird way. He was that guy for Jesus. What we read in his, right after we're introduced to him, John 1, chapter 35, John 1, verse 35, it says this: the following day, John was again standing with two of his disciples, two of the guys who followed him around all the time. John looked at him, who did he look at? It'll explain. He looked at him and declared, look, this is the Lamb of God. Jesus walked by. He spun his sign and said, hey, this is the Lamb of God. When John's two disciples heard this, they followed Jesus. Here was his response was, oh, that's him. Their response was, we're in. We followed him. So that is, you'll find that over and over in Scripture. As a matter of fact, we look down just 2 or 3 more verses. It says Andrew, that's Simon's brother, was one of the men that heard John say, this is Jesus, and followed him. And Andrew went to find his brother Simon and told him, we have found the Messiah. So here's what we see. There's this routine that happens. There's this sequence of events that happens over and over. When people met Jesus, Jesus would often say, "Follow me." It was an invitation. And people would follow him, and oddly enough, would often stop and then go find people they cared about and bring them along. Find, follow, bring along. In our series that we're in right now, this is for everyone. This is something we've done over and over. Jesus' invitation is for every person who will. His invitation is follow me. Just come with me. Not, I've got something for you. Here's your little gift. I'll send it to you, UPS. I'll do it Amazon. I promise in 3 days, but it may be 4 or 5 because COVID, that's the answer for anything that doesn't work in life now. I'm just saying, his invitation is for everyone. This is for everyone. We're wrapping up a series today. This is for everyone, and that is the everyone part. He invites. Everyone, follow me. Here's the crazy thing. People who have followed him almost always do this one thing. They take someone with them. Matter of fact, look just a little bit further down. It says the next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee, and he found Philip. And he said to him, this is pretty predictable because this is what Jesus does. Come and follow me. And the next thing, Philip went to look for Nathanael and told him, we have found the very person that Moses and the prophets wrote about. His name is Jesus, the son of Joseph from Nazareth. Pretty much the way it happened, Jesus found another everyone. He said, come and follow me. That was his invitation. His response was, heck yeah, let go of what he had and follow Jesus. Hang on just a minute before I come. Let me go find somebody I love and bring them with me. This is for everyone. God's invitation for every person is follow me. The natural response for people who follow him is to bring someone along. See how it works? That's the way life was intended to play out. If you're not following, you're missing out on God's best for you. And if you're not bringing someone with you, you're probably not following very closely. That is the way life plays out. Sometimes the busyness of life crowds complicates or whatever, but that is the way it was supposed to happen. So Jesus' invitation, we'll just put it on the screen for you. Jesus' invitation was to follow or go with him. Let me just stop. Jesus' invitation wasn't for us to invite Jesus into our lives. So, well, it just sounds like semantics. We're playing with words. It's not. It's a really different thing. Saying, I'm going to try to carve out room in my life. I'm going to set an extra seat at the table so Jesus can be invited into my life. I'm going to fit him in wherever I can is a very different thing than saying, I'm going to trust him to the point where I lay down my life and follow him for a better life. It's a very different thing. By the way, literally to be a Christian is to be a Christ follower, not a Christ obeyer, not a Christ believer. It's to be a Christ follower. Sometimes I think the reason that we find life to be so bland, so meaningless, so hopeless is that sometimes what we're wanting is to squeeze the good part of God out in our life. We'll invite him in and get what we can, help out where he can. But the reality is Christian life was never intended to be that. It was intended for us to say, my life, I would lay down to follow him for a better life. It's his life we're joining, not asking him to join ours. And then the other part is that people almost always bring a friend, somebody they love, when they follow Jesus. Those were the two things. The problem is that's not how we often live our lives. That's often not what I do. I could talk about other people, but this is an issue for me. That sometimes I get so busy. And here's the truth. What I want is the life I have right now. I want to get from where I am to all that I could be, and I want to get there in the quickest possible way with the least amount of effort, the least amount of pain, the least amount of frustrations. And so often what I experience in my life, just being more honest than maybe what you signed up for, is I often look at my life and go, what the heck? I'm trying hard to be the person God made me to be. Frankly, a lot harder than a lot of other people. I look around, there's people doing crappy stuff everywhere. I'm trying to be a good husband. I'm trying to be a good dad. I'm trying to be a good follower of Christ. I'm trying to be a good person in my neighborhood, for heaven's sake. I treat people nice at the drive-thru. I'm trying to be that person who would be salt and light in a broken world. I try to respond differently. I'm trying to learn. I'm not good at any of that stuff, but I'm trying to learn how to be the best version of me that I could possibly be. And then sometimes I'm just like, God, what the heck? Give me a break. I'm trying so hard, and sometimes it feels like you're not trying enough to help me. And so I often pray, God, take this away. And my friend is sick or I feel bad. Could you make me healthy? And I don't think there's anything wrong with praying those prayers. So don't misquote me on that. Don't send me your notes. I get that. That's something God openly expresses, that he wants us to bring him our burdens and bring our struggles. But part of the problem is I often end up very frustrated with God because he's not doing what I think he should to get me where I want to be. And sometimes I forget that what I'm doing is inviting him into my life. And if you could clean up the difficult parts so I could have a better life, that's what I want. And it's so different than what he's saying. If I would join him in his life, he will take me to where I need to go. I have to trust him an awful lot. And sometimes what I trust him is, I trust him to come into my world and make it better, not to take me into a world where I need to go. Does that make sense? Maybe this is my struggle. You guys all got it figured out. If that's the case, I'm okay with just puking my stuff out. Maybe you guys can all pray for me. So I read this weird story. It's kind of a fantasy story the other day. And when I read it, it's a little bit weird, but man, it landed home for me. It is my life. I have a feeling it might with you as well. I'll tell you in advance, it's got a weird word in it. It's about a young girl whose name is Ars, A-R-S. There is no E on the end of that. So stop your silly laughing about it. Her name is Ars. Once upon a time, there was this young girl, young lady whose name was Ars, and her family fell on really difficult times. They were incredibly poor. They were incredibly desperate. And so her parents did a desperate thing, and they betrothed her to this wealthy but hideous dragon. That's why I say it's fantasy. And they did it so they could secure a dowry for her. It's how their family was going to be able to survive and live. Well, when she heard, she was desperate. She was like, how could I live with this hideous being for the rest of my life? And so she didn't know what else to do. So she went to her elderly grandmother, who was wise beyond years. She went to her and explained the whole situation. And her grandmother sat her down and she said, I've got a plan. And she smiled at her and said, if you'll do exactly what I say, this will work out. And so Ars listened intently. And her grandmother told her this. Here's what I want you to do. On your wedding day, I want you to put on 10 layers, 10 wedding gowns, one over the other. And then after the wedding, on your wedding night, I want you to go to your new husband and I want you to tell him, I want to make a deal with you, that I will take off one layer of what I'm wearing for every layer of your scales, of your covering that you take off of you. Well, he heard this, and this was not what he expected and was not his wedding night that he dreamt of, but he agreed, because now what are we going to do? And so she took off one layer of her wedding gowns, of her 10 wedding gowns, and he took off one outer layer of the scaly, crusty part of what made him a hideous being. And it wasn't great, but it wasn't horribly painful, and he got through it, and it was a little uncomfortable, but it's just what you have to do sometimes to get what you want. And so he did it. And so as time went on, one layer came off for her and one more layer came off from him. Each layer that came off of her gave him hope. Each layer that came off of him caused a little more pain, a little more frustration, a little more agony. Well, if you fast forward to the end, the 10th layer comes off for her. And the last layer comes off from him. And lo and behold, as every good story goes, underneath all of those layers was a handsome prince. Well, I don't know about a handsome prince. I don't know that that's underneath any part of me. But there is a piece of this that helps me understand that what I'm up to in my life is what I want is wedding night. I just want what I want the way I want it. And I want God to come alongside and help me. I want God to help get me where I want to go. I want God to smooth out the rough edges of my life. I want God to protect me, and I pray this a lot, protect me and the people I love from all the things outside that would hurt or cripple or destroy or bring pain into my life. And then when he doesn't, I'm often frustrated with him, and I often tell him, I just don't understand. What's up? I thought if I asked, you would do. Maybe you've been there. And the longer I live, the more I begin to recognize is that what it means to follow Christ is that he is going to walk me through day by day a process that layer by layer removes the scales, removes the things that deform me, that removes the things that cover the person he's created me to be. And that he doesn't do that because he doesn't love me. He does that because he completely loves me. And what it means to follow Jesus is that we say things like this: would you do me a favor? I don't know, tell me the favor. Make sense? I hate that. It's a little bit like, why don't you write me a check and sign it, hand it to me? I'll let you know when I fill in the amount. I'm like, I don't think so. And part of the struggle with following Christ is there's a faith element that I have to believe that following him leads me to the place I need to be. I have to trust him enough to say, you take me where you need to take me, and I trust that it's for my best. Here's the hard part. I trust that you know what's best for me even more than I know what's best for me. See, that's cutting to the core of the whole situation. I've got my image for my life, and I try to get God to help me get there. And what he says is, I've got the image for your life. I made you, and I promise I will take you there. Will you trust me to follow me? His invitation is, come and follow me. It leaves us with this, and it's kind of how I'll wrap things up today. 2 Corinthians 5 says this beautiful verse. We love things like this. It says, this means that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone and a new life has begun. That all sounds amazing. What it means to follow Christ is that he literally creates something new inside of me. The negative part of that, new me is still covered by a lot of the scales that I was born into, of a broken world and a broken me, that I'm covered up, and it's a little bit hideous sometimes. I don't think it is, and I try to cover it up as best I can so you won't think it's hideous, but the truth is there's a lot of darkness and a lot of brokenness that still covers the me that God created me to be. And what Jesus, when he says, follow me, the question will be, well, where are we going? And here's the answer. I'm going to go wherever it takes to help reveal and unearth and unshackle the real you that can experience the life that is promised on the front sign, with joy and peace and fulfillment and purpose and a reality of a life that's worth looking for. That's what I've got for you. My process is we are going to walk through, and at times it'll be removing scales that don't hurt hardly at all. And sometimes we do away with those quickly, but some of them may be difficult, but you'll have to trust me that I am taking you somewhere worth going. So I'll leave you with 3 questions. Do you believe? I mean, not believe like I read it in a book. Yes, I believe in gravity. I don't mean that, not a thought process. Do you really believe that God has something worthwhile for you? Do you believe that he has what's best in mind for you? Because if you don't, the next step's irrelevant. If you don't buy it, you won't buy it. You'll play with it, you'll dabble with it, you'll take it for a test spin, but it'll never become part of your life. You'll never become part of his life. Do you believe? Do you really believe? Second question is, have you accepted his invitation? Point blank. Have you accepted? What is his invitation? Follow me. It's for everybody. Just like this series, this is for everybody. That is his invitation. If he could walk past you today, he'd look you square in the eye, wherever your eye is, whatever your name is, he would say to me, Chris, follow me. Come and follow me. I invite you into my life. Not me inviting him into mine. It's him inviting me into his. Have you ever reached a point where you said, I would trust you enough to lay down this piece of my life to follow you in yours? That is what it means to become a Christian. It's not as simple as pray a prayer or raise a hand, but sometimes the way we act on that is literally, for me, sometimes it just helps to put things into words, because I put everything into words, as you figured out today. But for me, it was literally putting words to what I felt on the inside, just to say, yes, I choose to follow you. I'm going to follow somebody. I'm going to follow me. I'm going to follow you, follow the clown on TV. I choose to follow you. Have you ever done that? It's new life, and new life comes with a new birth, and that's what birth is. It has an event moment where you say, I consciously choose to follow Jesus. Have you? And if you haven't, not have you gone to church, not have you been taught, not have you ever gone through, I'm just saying, have you ever done that? And if you haven't, I just want to tell you, it is a worthwhile thing. It's not more hype than it is substance. It is the starting point for a life, the life you were intended to have. The last question is, what part of your life do you think God's trying to remove so he can reveal the new you that he has built all along? What are you fighting against right now that you feel like, man, this is so painful for me? Why would God let me be at this stage of life? Why would God allow this crap into my life? And I just want to tell you, I don't know that everything in your life is God's perfect plan, but I do know that God works all those things to help remove the scales from us that the you were created to be can show forth. What is it? I wonder if you would just stop for a minute before you get out of this mode today and just say, what is it in my life right now? And for me, I think it's that. I think God's using that. That's tough for me. That scale hasn't been hard, but those scales coming off are hurting me deeply. Can I just help you? If you can notice what they are, it is easy to say, God, I understand what you're up to. I don't see how it's working. But if you're doing it to reveal the me inside, then I choose to accept it because I trust you. There you go. Let's pray. So God, today, whatever you're doing in people's lives, forget about that. The things you're doing in mine that frustrate me and hurt me, that I don't understand, I am trying so hard to just say, I have chosen to follow you. I know you won't take me somewhere that's not for my benefit. And so I trust you and I walk with you. Help me find peace in a process when I lay my life down and follow you. Thanks for caring enough to invite me into your life. Amen.